So I brought some of my friends and colleagues here to see Malcolm Gladwell, and one of them, I handed the ticket to him, and he said, "Oh, that guy with the crazy hair?" Well, he's known for a lot more than that. Despite having written a book called Blank, The Power of Thinking Without Thinking, I think one of the beauties of Malcolm Gladwell's works is that he makes you think. His work uncovers truths hidden in strange data. And as a marketer and a philosophy major, things that are strange and uncovering hidden truths are really something dear to my heart, and another reason why I like Malcolm Gladwell. His academic research and critical analysis and fascinating style provides astonishing and useful insights about our world and our place in it. His best-selling books travel avenues of science, reason, and anecdote, and include The Tipping Point, Outliers, Blink, and What the Dogs Saw. How many people have read a Malcolm Gladwell book? Okay, well, that's a lot of you. That also explains why Malcolm Gladwell is the #1 best-selling author on Amazon in the business section, and I think he ranks 19th overall in history on Amazon.com. So his new book, which he is here to talk about, is called David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants. Philadelphia, I think, is an appropriate venue to be talking about underdogs for many reasons, but then Rocky, of course, what bigger underdog than he. In this book, Malcolm Gladwell challenges conventional notions of obstacles and apparent setbacks, demonstrating that beauty and progress often arise from what looks like suffering and adversity. His singular gift is animating the experiences of his subjects, says David Takami in the Seattle Times. Gladwell has an uncanny ability to simplify without being simplistic, clean and vivid, strunk and white prose in the service of peerless storytelling. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Malcolm Gladwell.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. I think this is my third time at the Free Library, and it only gets better. I'm on the middle of my book tour, and it occurred to me when I was coming here that the first stop on my book tour was the 92nd Street Y in New York, which is the Jewish Y. And then I went to LA, and I did an evening at that synagogue on Wilshire, that new fancy one. And then I went to San Francisco, and I did the JCC. And then I went to Washington, and I did the synagogue at 6th and I. I think you can see where I'm going with this. Of course, this explains why I managed to come tonight, because it's Shabbat. It's the one night of the week that I'm free to talk to non-Jewish audiences. Very glad that worked out. So I'm not going to talk about my book tonight, or at least I'm not going to tell you a story from my book, because I figured most of you are going to buy the book. Why would I ruin the experience for you? So I thought I would talk about a story that is related, bears directly on one of the big themes of the book. And one of the big themes of the book is, why do underdogs fight? Why do people who are outgunned and outmanned and overmatched continue to keep on fighting against much larger and stronger opponents? Right? What fuels that kind of resistance? And so I thought what I'd do is tell a story about someone who I think reflects on this question in a very important way. The story is about a woman named Alva Smith, who was one of the most important figures in the suffragette movement in the early part of the 20th century. And she's interesting because if you look at Alva Smith's life, there is very little in her life that would suggest or portend to a life of radicalism. She's the most unlikely radical imaginable. And if we understand how she came to take up the position of radicalism, I think we'll get some insight into this crucial question of why it is that people choose to battle giants. So Alva Smith actually has three names. Alva Belmont is the name that she dies with. Alva Vanderbilt is the name that she became famous with. And Alva Smith is the name she was born with. She was the daughter of a semi-prosperous businessman. She grew up in Mobile, Alabama, and then her family moved to New York City. And she was, even from a very young age, a piece of work. She was domineering, dictatorial, bossy, bad-tempered, egomaniacal. She was a handful. She picked fights. She, even from the youngest age, she was this little kind of fire plug with a face that a friend of hers, trying to be nice, said resembled a Pekingese. But I think actually it'd be more accurate to say that she looked a lot like a pit bull. She was that, you have some sense of what, she's one of these indomitable people who walks into a room and takes it over. And so there she is in New York, and she has grand ambitions for herself at a very young age. And she decides the only way she's going to make her mark on the world is if she has access to some kind of money, right? And so she doesn't have any herself, and so she casts her eye across New York society and settles on a young man named Willie Vanderbilt, who was a charming, handsome playboy who just happened to be the grandson of the richest man in the world. And so she marries him. And she bears him a daughter named Consuelo and two sons. And then she sets about on a course to become the greatest conspicuous consumer in the history of conspicuous consumption. And I feel like all of us who've lived through the last 15 years realize what an extraordinary accomplishment that is. The first thing she does is she buys 800 acres on Long Island and instructs the greatest architects of the time to build her something in shingles overlooking the bay. And then she buys the block at the corner of 52nd and 5th and builds a French-style chateau, which costs in $1890, $3 million, which is a couple of $100 million in today's money. And to give you a sense of what this chateau is like, I'm just going to read to you an account of it from one of the many books that have been written about Alva Vanderbilt's real estate portfolio, all of which are exercises in what might be called real estate pornography. So here's the description of her house. Everything was everywhere. Walls of red African marble, of stamped leather, walls hung with blue silk brocade, with red velvet embroidered with leaves, flowers, and butterflies, enriched with cut crystal and precious stones, ceilings of mahogany, of brass, of colored glass, of bamboo, wainscoting of rosewood inlaid with mother of pearl and brass, ebony inlaid with ivory, polished ebony inlaid with satinwood, and Grecian, Oriental, Elizabethan, English, Renaissance, French, and Victorian touches. In crowded rooms bursting with bronze, stained glass, marble, and mosaics. Then she decides she wants a yacht, and not just any yacht, the biggest yacht of all time, 285 feet, which she christens the Alva. What's the matter with you guys? Then she decides that she wants a country cottage. She builds one in Newport, Rhode Island, and I won't bother to go into a description of it except to say that the construction of this cottage required first the construction of a special harbor in Newport, big enough to handle the 500,000 cubic feet of white Italian marble she was importing just for the facade. So now she has the country house, the city house, the country cottage, the yacht, and her attention turns to her daughter, Consuelo. And Consuelo is this shy girl painfully shy, who has been raised in the strictest of fashion by her mother. She is required to speak only French.